Have you ever waited for someone to apologize, but it never comes? You replay the moment in your mind, again and again, wondering if you overreacted, or if you missed something, or maybe if you're imagining it all. And when you finally say the words yourself, the apology that you hope to hear, the air between you changes, but not in the way you expected. There's no relief, no acknowledgement, just a quiet distance, a subtle shift in how you feel about them. What if I told you this isn't about you? It isn't about their disrespect, or their indifference, or even their arrogance. It's about something far deeper, something rooted in their mind, their experiences, their self-image. Some people never apologize first, and it's not because they don't understand the pain they've caused. It's because they've built an entire inner world to protect themselves from seeing their own imperfection. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And in this reflection lies the key to understanding someone who refuses to apologize and to understanding the nature of apology itself. Saying, "I'm sorry," is not just words. It's a moment of vulnerability. It's admitting, "I was wrong, and I accept it." For some, that moment feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. They fear falling, not just into someone else's judgment, but into their own recognition of imperfection. To them, apologizing is more than uncomfortable. It's dangerous. It exposes the fragility they've worked so hard to conceal. But it isn't arrogance, not initially. It's protection. The people who never apologize first have often learned early that mistakes invite pain, that imperfection invites rejection. And so they build a shield, pride, defensiveness, rationalization. And behind it, they walk carefully, avoiding situations that force them to admit fault. You might notice it in subtle ways: a deflection when confronted, a shifting of blame, an over-explanation that never quite addresses the hurt caused. They can justify their actions to themselves endlessly, constructing narratives where they are the hero, the victim, or at least the unassailable. And the apology, that simple acknowledgement, threatens to undo the story they've carefully built. Yet, there is a shadow beneath the armor. Jung called the parts of ourselves we deny, the unacknowledged and unaccepted, the shadow. For the person who cannot apologize, the shadow is shame. They hide from it, project it outward, turn it into anger or indifference. It isn't absence of conscience, but a fear of confronting it. And the more they resist, the more that unhealed part of themselves grows louder in quiet moments. Consider the cycle of interactions. Someone hurts you, subtly or overtly. You wait, you hope, you try to reason. They do not apologize. You try to move on. And still, there is tension, an invisible weight. Why do they do this? Because staying silent can feel like control. They understand, consciously or not, that people crave closure. Withholding an apology maintains a subtle hierarchy. It keeps them safe from the exposure of humility, the surrender that acknowledgement demands. They believe that admitting fault diminishes them, weakens them, or strips away respect. But, ironically, this control comes at a cost. It isolates them. It builds invisible walls around their relationships. The very thing they protect themselves from, vulnerability, being wrong, becomes the reason they cannot connect fully. And yet, to them, the cost is invisible because the alternative, facing their imperfection, feels unbearable. Some never apologize because they fear humiliation more than guilt. Guilt implies, I did something wrong. Humiliation implies, I am wrong. For someone sensitive to shame, this distinction is crucial. Apologizing collapses the careful architecture of self-image they've built. It exposes the fragile self beneath the confident exterior. And still, you might see moments of honesty, glimpses of their inner struggle. Perhaps a quiet reflection after conflict, or a fleeting expression of regret that passes too quickly to be captured. These moments are the shadow breaking through, a reminder that human beings, even those who refuse to apologize, carry the same fears, the same vulnerabilities, the same longing for acceptance. Why do they project blame onto others? Why do they rationalize endlessly? It is a survival mechanism. If they allowed themselves to feel the full weight of their mistake, they would be forced to confront the unprotected self, the part of them that remembers being small, unseen, or unsafe. Projection and rationalization are shields, not weapons, though to others they feel like offense. Even the strongest relationships can struggle under this pattern. Because apology is not about winning or losing, it is about acknowledgement, the recognition of impact. When one party refuses to acknowledge, consciously or unconsciously, the imbalance persists. And over time, resentment can build in the other person, even if the initial hurt was small. The person who never apologizes first might remain unaware of this, focused only on maintaining their internal equilibrium. Yet, there is always an internal cost. Avoiding apology does not remove the awareness of wrongdoing. It suppresses it temporarily. But Jung's insight into the human psyche tells us that suppressed emotion manifests in other ways. Anger, anxiety, even subtle self-sabotage are often the price of refusing to confront the self honestly. Some are caught in cycles of distraction to avoid this confrontation. Work, entertainment, social media, even the pursuit of wealth, all become buffers against the discomfort of self-reflection. They chase activity to escape the quiet moments when conscience might whisper, and still, the whisper persists. It is quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible. But it is there, waiting for them to face the truth they cannot name. It is often misunderstood, the silence of someone who never apologizes first. People assume pride, arrogance, or even cruelty. But beneath that exterior is a carefully maintained structure of thought, a psychological fortress built over years, sometimes decades. Every action, every deflection, every excuse serves to protect the self from exposure. To show fault, to admit imperfection, is not merely uncomfortable for them. It is a threat to their sense of identity. Consider this: when a person refuses to apologize, it may be because they have learned early in life that mistakes were punished harshly, or that admitting wrong led to shame that lingered far longer than any corrective guidance. They may have grown up in environments where vulnerability was dangerous or trust was conditional. In such contexts, the mind learns survival strategies, and one of the most powerful strategies is avoidance. Avoidance takes many forms: silence, deflection, shifting blame, over-explaining, even rationalization, finding reasons to justify their behavior, is a subtle form of protection. And while these behaviors may seem defensive or selfish to outsiders, they are, in their mind, necessary. To act otherwise would feel like exposing themselves to harm. Interestingly, the refusal to apologize also reflects a deep struggle with self-regulation. To admit fault, one must first recognize fault, and recognition requires introspection. Introspection demands honesty. Honesty can trigger uncomfortable emotions. guilt, shame, fear, and fear, for some, is paralyzing. This is why some people can rationalize endlessly, why they construct elaborate internal narratives. They need to reconcile their actions with their self-image. Without this reconciliation, the act of apologizing feels like a collapse of self. It is as if admitting wrong would dissolve the very structure that holds them together. Yet, in the absence of apology, there is tension. Even if they avoid confrontation successfully, the mind stores information. Every unresolved conflict, every slight, every unacknowledged mistake adds weight. It accumulates silently, shaping future interactions, influencing decisions, even altering moods. And while it may appear that they are unaffected, the truth is more subtle. Refusing to apologize first often creates an internal feedback loop. Guilt triggers defensiveness. Defensiveness justifies avoidance. Avoidance suppresses introspection, and suppression, over time, generates anxiety and emotional fatigue. This is not a conscious choice, usually. Few people wake up deciding, "I will never apologize first." It becomes a pattern, a habit reinforced by experience. Every time they successfully avoid vulnerability, the brain rewards the behavior, and the pattern strengthens. At the same time, they often possess remarkable awareness of social dynamics. They can read moods, anticipate reactions, and maneuver carefully. Ironically, this skill makes them appear confident, even dominant. Others may interpret their refusal to apologize as strength. Yet, the strength is not absolute. It is conditional, bound to the walls of their own protective strategies. Carl Jung, in his exploration of the human psyche, emphasized the role of the shadow, the unrecognized or rejected aspects of ourselves. For those who never apologize first, the shadow may be guilt, fear, or shame. These emotions are denied, projected outward, or avoided. And they manifest in subtle ways: a slight irritation, an unexpected defensiveness, or even passive aggression. The shadow is always present, shaping behavior beneath conscious awareness. There is also the aspect of self-identity. Many people who avoid apologizing construct a narrative of self that must remain unblemished. They identify as rational, capable, fair, or even moral. To admit fault threatens this narrative, and when identity feels threatened, the response is often rigid, defensive, and impenetrable. Yet, understanding this does not excuse harm. Relationships, both personal and professional, rely on acknowledgement and accountability. When one party refuses to apologize, it disrupts balance. Others may feel frustration, confusion, or resentment. And often, they are left to navigate the emotional consequences without guidance. Interestingly, psychology shows that the need to protect self-image is universal. Everyone avoids exposure to some degree, but some people take it further, making avoidance a default strategy. They do not deny wrongdoing lightly. They deny vulnerability, deny imperfection, deny the acknowledgement of impact. And this is why the patterns of non-apology often persist. Social factors reinforce this behavior. In environments where status, power, or reputation is paramount, admitting fault may be seen as weakness. Even in more collaborative settings, the fear of judgment can be immense. And modern life, with its constant scrutiny, social media, and comparisons, can amplify these fears. Financial or career success sometimes masks this internal struggle. A person who refuses to apologize first may excel professionally, navigate corporate politics skillfully, or gain social influence. Yet beneath this external success, the internal conflict remains. They may avoid meaningful connection, avoid deep vulnerability, or struggle with authenticity. It is also worth noting that not all people who refuse to apologize are malicious or calculating. Some are simply acting from patterns learned long ago. Some are cautious, sensitive, or anxious. Their behavior is a reflection of survival strategies, not necessarily of moral failing. Understanding their psychology allows us to interact differently. Instead of frustration, it encourages observation. Instead of resentment, it allows detachment. And instead of trying to force an apology, one can focus on clear communication, boundaries, and self-preservation. Apology is, after all, not just a social expectation. It is a conscious acknowledgement of impact. And when one party cannot offer it, the responsibility for clarity and resolution often shifts to the other. This is not unfair. It is pragmatic. It is a recognition of human behavior as it is, not as we wish it to be. At the same time, people who never apologize first are not beyond change. Self-awareness is the key. When they can observe their own patterns without judgment, when they can recognize the shadow, the fear, the internal conflict, they may begin to shift. But such change is slow, fragile, and often requires a sense of safety. Safety from judgment, from humiliation, from the collapse of identity. Relationships teach this indirectly. Those who engage with people who refuse to apologize first learn patience, resilience, and the limits of control. They learn that accountability is not always given, but can be observed, inferred, and managed. And they learn, ultimately, that the refusal to apologize is more about the other person's internal world than about themselves. Even in moments of conflict, there is opportunity. Opportunity to understand human behavior, to practice compassion without compromise, to observe patterns and reflect on our own responses. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." In this sense, patience and observation are forms of wisdom. They do not reward the avoidance of apology, but they protect the observer from frustration, resentment, or unnecessary emotional drain. And so, the person who never apologizes first is both understandable and perplexing. They operate from fear, pride, and protection. Yet, they also carry the universal struggles of humanity, the desire for acceptance, the fear of vulnerability, the tension between self-preservation and authenticity. To comprehend them is not to excuse them. It is to recognize the deep psychological mechanisms that drive their choices and the ways those choices ripple outward into relationships. And maybe now you start to realize it was never just about the apology. It was never about the words, "I'm sorry." It's about the psychology behind why some people just can't say it first. You see, an apology isn't just a phrase. It's a symbol of submission in the human mind. To apologize means to admit defeat in a social exchange. And for someone who's spent their life protecting their image, that's not something they can easily do. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that's exactly what happens here. When they refuse to apologize, it's not pride you're seeing. It's fear. Fear of being seen as weak. Fear of being wrong. Fear that the fragile self they've built might collapse if they admit fault. Think about it. When you've built your self-worth around being right, every apology feels like a small death. A small death of the ego. And most people would rather hurt others then let their ego die. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, only happens when we confront the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. That includes the part that hates being wrong, the part that wants to control everything, the part that would rather lose people than lose face. When you finally face that part, you'll see it for what it really is: a scared child pretending to be strong. And the moment you embrace that, something changes. You stop seeing apologies as surrender and start seeing them as healing.